start with a little bit of your personal journey into veganism. What's kind of brought you
Yeah,
here?
yeah, no, that's a good question. So, my wife, who was my girlfriend then, she was kind of one of the early OG vegans back when no one really even knew what the word vegan meant, including myself. And I remember we'd go to restaurants and she'd explain to the waiter or waitress kind of what she was looking to get, and they looked at her like she was crazy, and I was sitting there kind of just with my hands up in the air. And so that kind of, I think that was kind of my entry into veganism. I started to learn about it from her, and her reasoning was 100% for animals. At the time, I was a professional hockey player, and started to just kind of slowly tinker with things. I would take certain products, animal products, out of my diet and just see how I felt. And it was a slow process for me. It wasn't like I watched Cowspiracy and the next day I was vegan. It was just a slow and steady kind of trajectory where I just started to take those things out and started to feel a difference. And probably over the course of a year or two, it happened. And one day I had a chicken schnitzel in Prague that wasn't very good, and that was kind of my final step. I said I'm done with animal meat completely and animal products, and haven't looked back since then.
You mentioned your girlfriend obviously going for kind of ethical reasons, girlfriend now wife, and for you was that kind of that seed being sown with you too? Were you starting to register that, or was it purely kind of dietary initially?
Yeah, it was purely for performance for me initially. And I don't know, I think I was like everyone else. I didn't really want to make the connection. I actively didn't think about it. But then once I actually started to go down that path, you can't turn back. And, like every vegan says, I only wish I did it sooner.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I'm fascinated by, being an elite level athlete in the best hockey league in the world, and, top performers who I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, have probably got a fairly traditional sense of nutrition. This is tried and tested. Protein heavy diets and so on and so forth. What did your teammates and your coaches and so on make of you saying, do you know what, I'm going vegan?
Yeah, I think it depended where I was playing. When I was in the NHL, I think guys on the team just kind of knew I was my own character. I did things the way I like to do it, and they accepted me for that. And when you're playing at an elite level, they're very helpful with that kind of a thing. So the team that the team coordinator that set up all the meals, he always did a great job of making sure there were plenty of options for me. And you'll never go hungry. They call the NHL, they call it the Never Hungry League, right? So you have food everywhere you go. But later in my career, when I played overseas, I played in Russia my last 2 years, and they thought I was crazy. They thought I was from another planet. But even both leagues have changed a lot since then. I've been retired now for four almost 5 years, I think, and what you're seeing now, especially in the NHL, is it's come a long way from that meat and potatoes lifestyle. I would say on every single team in the NHL, there's probably 5 to 6 guys that are completely plant-based.
Really? Wow. And this is a performance thing from their viewpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where their stance is on the environment and the animals, but their predominant decision making would always be around performance.
Wow. Was there ever any, because was it 7 years ago this was, so was there any pressure from any coach at any point to sort of, say to you, do you know what, TJ, this might not be the way to go here, from a performance point of view?
I don't know about coaches. Like maybe when I was in Russia, they would say that. They'd say you need meat to be strong and all that. The classic old school mindset. But I think it's come along so far that everyone can see the benefits of it. You look at any documentary, any peer-reviewed study now, it really points towards being vegan and plant-based for the best performance.
Yeah. Did you have to relearn much in terms of like, what it was that you were going to eat to sustain yourself and not only sustain but to thrive at that level?
Yeah, I think for me, like I came into the NHL, I was 19 years old, so I didn't know anything. I wasn't cooking my own meals. I was just basically the furthest extent of cooking would be, making oatmeal in the morning or something very basic, throwing a sandwich together. But over time, I started to learn more about it and really get interested in food and how it affected me. So by the time I made the full switch, I would say I was pretty dialed in. I knew exactly what I needed. I wasn't too concerned about missing nutrients because I knew I was getting so much.
Did you ever find yourself becoming a bit of a go-to on the teams that you played for as the kind of, if you're interested in kind of plant-based nutrition, you go and speak to teams?
Yeah, I mean, it's really come a full distance from then when I played. I think not many guys were that interested back when I was still playing, but now it's I get a message, I'd say once a week, once every 2 weeks from someone that I either played with or sometimes guys that I don't even know and say, hey, I know you're vegan. I know you were one of the first guys, if not the first guy in the NHL to ever be vegan. Can you give me some tips? Can you give me some introductory, almost like lessons on how to do it?
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Good reputation to have. Maybe another string to your bow, like a sort of nutritional coach for elite level athletes. I like it.
I pretty much have a copy paste document that I send to people now. It's that I wrote up, so I don't have to do it every time.
I love it. That's awesome. So, at what point did your kind of interest peak into the world that you're in now, in terms of like food waste, and you started to see this problem? Was this a kind of a culmination of, you come to veganism for the nutrition, then you start to see the ethics, and then you start to see the environmental? Was there kind of some other triggers for you?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. But for me, it was, once I was getting ready to retire from playing hockey, I was looking at different avenues, what to do next. And my co-founder with Outcast Foods, Dr. Darren Burke, him and I became friends actually my first year in the NHL. He had started a supplement company and grew it from a $50,000 line of credit to, in the fifth year, over $20 million in revenue. So very successful enterprise. And like I said, him and I kept in touch throughout my playing days. And he actually became vegan shortly after I did. So we always would talk about kind of trends in the marketplace and different things that we were seeing and opportunities, because after he sold his business, we were kind of looking for something to do next together. And the whole environmental piece, I think it just goes hand in hand with a vegan life. You just automatically are more attuned to it. You know the impact your food makes. So we always would see things in newspapers and magazines about food waste, and it was always talking about the problem. Everyone was just saying, hey, look at this full crop that went to waste of apples because they were bruised or too small or too big, and look at these bananas that showed up at a distribution center for a grocer and they were too yellow, so they ended up in the landfill. But no one ever had talked about a solution. So the two of us thought we could be the two geniuses to come up with a solution. And really what we came up with was so simplistic that we were shocked that no one else did it. It was to partner with these waste companies, the companies that are wasting these fruits and vegetables. So grocers, food processors, farms, and figure out a way to take the product from them so it's not degrading further, it's not rotting. You get it to it early enough before it hits a best if used by date, or if it hits a point when you can't use it for human consumption, and simply dehydrate it and give it a 2 to 3 year shelf life, and then find a home for it. So really shocking how simple it was that no one was doing it. We looked in Canada where we are, we looked in the US and Europe, everywhere, and no one was doing it. So huge opportunity, huge challenge, but here we are, a little over 3 years past when we launched, and everyone's seeing how important sustainability and upcycling is.
I guess when you came to some of these food producers and said, we've got this idea, I imagine they were kind of over the moon at the prospect of there being a another life for some of their products that ultimately were going to go to waste. They were going to be lost for them.
Yeah, it's almost threefold. So the first way is obviously the amazing PR of saying, hey, we're a zero waste company. The second is for them to be able to save money, because a lot of these companies, you think about a grocer, they're paying tipping fees to get rid of the product to send it to a landfill. So that's a big money saver for them. And then the third is exactly what you said. They know that the product is actually going to be used. I mean, you think about a farmer, that all the work they put in to grow a crop, for them to actually see it go to waste, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, literally, blood, sweat, and tears gone into this produce and just thrown away.
Yeah, and it's not their fault either, right? Like, they can't sell the product, and then a lot of times they give away as much as they possibly can. But if it's a massive crop, we're talking, hundreds of thousands, millions of pounds of this product. I mean, a food shelter can only take so much.
What were the kind of technical challenges? Because I'm following along with you in terms of, that sounds like a fantastic idea. But if you then said to me, right, we're going to start a business and figure out how on earth you go about doing that, I'd be completely lost. So what was that learning curve like for you? I'm just fascinated to go from hockey to, I've got this amazing idea, to, like, how do we do this?
Well, thankfully, my co-founder, Dr. Burke, is a scientist. So he's got great connections within the university sector in Canada, and there's the National Research Council in Canada is a government entity where we partnered with them to come up with our own unique dehydration technology. So it did take probably a year and a half to come up with our own process, which is patent pending, and then on top of that, our own unique internal playbook of how to dehydrate multiple items. So you find a lot of dehydrators out there that'll just do sweet potatoes, for example, or just do potatoes. But for us, in order to make the largest impact, we wanted to do everything. So Darren always says we dehydrate everything from avocado to zucchini and everything in between.
Wow. Forgive my complete ignorance and naivety here, but I'm going to ask anyway. So these places where they dehydrated food existed before. There's a market for dehydrate. What is that market? And forgive me, because you're going to say an obvious product now that I use every day that I'm not aware of.
Well, something that people are typically surprised to hear is that a vast majority of dehydrated products come from China. So there's always headaches when it comes to that. There's plenty of issues. It's well documented with purchasing from China. But dehydrated products go into everything from pet foods to cosmetics, all the way to better for you snacks. You think about like trail mixes, granolas, cereals, and then the powders go into supplements. They're really the application list is very lengthy, because dehydration's been around for eons.
Wow. Exactly as I suspected. It's all over the place. It's amazing. Yeah. So, from the scale of the problem point of view, because you mentioned, and I love this idea of, because you're absolutely right. Every time I turn on the news, I feel saddened by this waste problem. We're confronted with it, and rightly so. But no one's ever spoken about the solution. What's the scale of the problem?
It is so big globally that even if Outcast Foods, if we had a facility, I would say if we had 200 scale facilities, we're still taking out just such a small scope of what the problem is. So we're talking, I think the latest I saw was almost 1 billion tons of food gets wasted every year. Yeah, and obviously a Canadian ton is 1,000 pounds, so or 1,000 kilos, sorry. So that the amount is just, you can't even wrap your head around it.
Yeah. What's the response been like so far? When you've pitched this kind of idea to folks and you've told them about it, what have they been thinking? Like, what a great idea! Why has no one ever thought of this before?
Yeah, I mean, with having a startup, you pitch your idea a lot. So especially because we've recently closed our Series A, we raised $10 million, and I think we pitched to probably, since we started the business, we've probably pitched over 250 times. So it's a lot. And everyone always says the same thing. They say, wow, it's an amazing idea. And then you get into the details, right? You're dealing with food waste. Even though it's not waste, you still have a lot of regulatory issues, which thankfully we've gotten through them all. And it's capital intensive, right? So when you have heavy machinery and you're dealing with millions of pounds of food waste, it's expensive. So we're in the process of building out a 46,000 square foot scale facility just outside of Toronto, and this is a big step for us as a business, and we'll continue to grow. You've probably seen how important sustainability is now, and it's top of mind for consumers, so we're in a good spot.
Yeah, you sure are. Yeah, I don't think there's many others who are even approaching the problem in a similar effective way. So, yeah, it's pretty incredible. You mentioned the regulatory kind of elements. I'm fascinated by that because obviously I'd imagine there is a legal requirement from a food safety point of view and so on, and this food has kind of been deemed food waste. And often, I sort of dabbled at a very kind of retail facing sense in kind of like food sales and so on in my younger day, and I remember there being all kinds of legislation about once food was kind of like expired, what had to happen to it, at retail source, where it had to be processed and got rid of in a certain way and so on and so forth. How have you overcome those kind of barriers?
Yeah, well, the long and short of it is having an amazing quality assurance team. So there's a lot to deal with, but at the end of the day, the food we're getting isn't technically waste if you think about it. So if we're getting product from a farmer, it's I would say 90% of the time it's just misfit or ugly, right? So it's still very early in its stage. A lot of the times it was just harvested recently, or they weren't going to harvest it because they knew they couldn't sell it. So we partner with them, they harvest it, it goes right to us. So there's not an issue there. Second is like food processors, same thing. They're dealing with product that they're going to process at its peak time. So they're not waiting. They're not going to process it too early or too late in this stage. We're just taking the byproduct. And then with the grocers, I think a lot of people think that we're taking the product that is coming off the shelves at the stores. That's it's an apple that's kind of mushy or getting to that rotten stage. We're working with them at their distribution centers. So it's a truckload of bananas showing up that are too yellow. It's a truckload of raspberry clamshells that show up, and the best if used by date is in 5 days instead of 2 weeks. So they want to say, we're not going to pay to ship it out to all of our stores and have it on the shelves for 1 day and then have to get rid of it. So we take it, we process it before it's best if used by date. And then the last part of that is our process, our dehydration process has a verified kill step. It has 2, which essentially mean that no harmful bacteria is left in it at all.
Pretty comprehensive, and I imagine it had to be, but yeah, again, another like technical challenge that I can only imagine the steps you had to go.
Yeah, it was a lot of time and a lot of work.
Yeah, absolutely. So thinking about the nutritional aspect, because obviously that's the sort of the safety aspect, which would probably like you said, I think most people's image of food waste is the stuff they see at the end of the day in the supermarket. They don't see even the bigger scale of the problem, that truck of bananas that turns up, that kind of stuff. What about the kind of nutritional elements? Obviously the ugly food and so on is, there's no problem there. But is there in the dehydration process, how or can you even preserve the nutritional quality of the food? Is that something that you can do?
Yeah, of course. So it all depends on how you dehydrate it. So that was a big piece for us when we were starting on this journey. Is you don't want to save all these fruits and vegetables and this food and have it have no nutritional value. It just makes no sense.
Yeah.
So the main two traditional drying techniques are spray drying and drum drying, which are essentially at an extremely high heat. So you're degrading the product to a point where it basically has almost no nutrition. So that was out of the question for us. And that was, I would say, 95% of all dehydration processes are that. The rest is, freeze drying, which uses up so much energy. and the product is, I don't know if you've tried freeze-dried fruits or vegetables. It's kind of a weird crunch to it, so we didn't want that either. Our process is at a low thermal temperature, so you maintain a very high level of nutrients, sometimes up to between 5 to 10 times higher than spray drying and drum drying.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a huge advantage, I imagine, over anyone trying to do the other processes and so on. Is there a kind of an expense attached to that sort of higher quality processing? I would imagine there is. Otherwise, I'd imagine everybody would go the route of the keeping the nutritional quality.
Yeah, it is more expensive because it's multi-step. It's not you don't just throw it all into one machine and then all of a sudden it comes out dehydrated, right? So it's more expensive, but we sell a really unique product because when brands work with us and buy our ingredients, they can market sustainability and food waste reduction right on the front of their packaging, which is the number 2 buying decision behind taste for consumers right now.
Yeah, absolutely. The focus of the business, obviously, on fruits, vegetables, produce, and so on. As somebody who has been vegan for 7 years and so on, is there a kind of a key element of this business that's kind of underpinning it for you that is about trying to, I suppose, advocate for people eating more nutritionally dense plant-based foods?
Yeah, it is definitely. I mean, the fact that Darren and I are both vegan, it's really ingrained into our kind of ethos as a brand is 100% vegan. We've had some funny opportunities with seafood companies coming to us and saying, hey, we have a lot of byproduct, could you guys dehydrate that? We'll buy it back off you. And a lot of different meat companies, but we would never go near that stuff. It's just totally against the way we deal with things ethically. And then also, like you said, we're adding healthy, nutritious food back into the food system and food cycle. So people are going to be able to eat healthier products. And the other half of our business, apart from the ingredient sales part, is we have a supplement brand, which is 100% vegan and makes it very convenient for people to get their nutrients. You put a scoop of it in our protein powder or our greens powder, mix it with water or in a smoothie, and you're off and running with a very healthy, nutritious meal.
I guess that that particular element, the supplementation, was a world that you're completely au fait with from being an elite level athlete. Have you found any I guess kind of skepticism, resistance from folks who are used to their traditional kind of whey protein and so on? You saying to them, actually a plant-based protein source is higher quality and so on. Have you had any pushback?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on what community you're looking to sell to. If you're selling to like the hardcore gym people that they're trying to really bulk up and be jacked, I think they really have that mindset in their head where whey is the best product. Although again, it's been proven in peer-reviewed studies that plant-based protein powder is better for you, obviously better for the planet and better for the animals, of course, than whey. So I think other brands have actually done the work for us with that, ones that have been around for years and years and have been plant-based. So they kind of did the groundwork for us on that, and now we're coming in as the first ever sustainable plant-based protein, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, certainly is. And I think the like you say, the tide is turning in the sort of in the world of kind of athletes and people just interested in their kind of health and fitness. I think things like Game Changers and so on has kind of like lodged in people's psyche and so on. Have you seen more of that specifically since things like Game Changers and even Seaspiracy? I know it's obviously about the animal agriculture industry and in particular the oceans, but still this message of huge volumes of waste is kind of apparent in it. Have you seen any kind of reaction off the back of kind of this rise in sort of vegan documentaries, if you like?
Yeah, definitely. I see your Sea Shepherd sweater too. That's awesome. But yeah, I think you can go to the data too, right? It's double-digit increase in plant-based every single year across all categories. So it's only going up. I know you and I talked offline for a second when we're kind of in this bubble of everything around us is vegan. So sometimes you wonder if it's still that way on the outside. But I mean, you can go to any major supermarket and you see the plant-based sections just growing and growing every year. So what I've seen in my travels is plant-based is top of mind for everyone, and the folks that are slowly adopting it, they're going to make it there on their own terms, and it's going to happen eventually. And for us as a business, like year over year, we had almost a 4,000% increase in our direct-to-consumer sales with our brand. Wow. So the data's there, and hopefully we can just keep moving forward as a vegan community.
As you say, we talked a little bit about it offline, and I wanted to sort of save the asking you this question until we were recording. But I am fascinated to find out a little bit about what sort of the vegan life is like, admittedly with the caveat of we're in our vegan bubbles in Canada. Is there particular areas of the country that are more vegan friendly, cities that have kind of adopted things faster than others? You know, is there any pattern generationally? What sort of trends have you seen?
Yeah, you know, obviously the larger cities are going to be more fast moving when it comes to anything that's on trend, right? So I live in Calgary, but my wife is from Toronto, which is the biggest city in Canada. And I mean, you can't go probably 2 blocks without a vegan restaurant or a place that is serving vegan food in Toronto. You would be hard pressed to find a place, whether it's, you know, a 100% vegan place or even a steakhouse that doesn't have vegan options now in pretty much every major city in Canada, which is amazing to see. And it's only blossoming further, right? Like in Calgary, I think since I've been here, we got back, I don't know, only a month ago, and I've seen 2 new vegan restaurants open just in that time, and I know of 2 more that are opening. Wow. So these guys they're doing well, and if they weren't successful, you wouldn't see more of them opening up.
And exciting times for you from a business point of view, as well as sort of an ethical and a kind of worldview.
Yeah, definitely. No, I could go to a new vegan restaurant every day, and whenever I travel, that's the first thing I look up. What's the coolest vegan restaurant in town? And I've gotten to try some really amazing food over the years.
In your travels with your sort of hockey career, I imagine there's a lot of not only obviously moving clubs every so often, things like this, but the away trips and all the rest of it, the kind of road trips. Was there any particular standouts in terms of like vegan hotspots where you thought, you know what, I'd like to spend a bit more time here?
That's a good question. I mean, New York City, there's so many vegan restaurants. I think there's probably over 50 in New York, I would say at least. So Vancouver in Canada as well has so many. You wish you were there a little longer. Like you're trying to one vegan place for breakfast, one for lunch, one for dinner, and then sometimes one of those is so amazing that you're like, I have to go back here, right? So I love traveling and trying new places. So I'd say Vancouver in Canada is probably has the best, and then in the U.S. like California and New York, obviously those are the spots.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose New York's one of those. Everything is there.
Oh yeah, definitely.
A bit London-like in that sense. Yeah, absolutely. So again, going sort of back and forth between hockey and Outcast, I'm fascinated by, you've mentioned an awful lot of kind of the technical stuff that you've had to, I imagine, learn, and you've had it sounds like an incredible partner to support you through that journey. But coming from the world of professional hockey, elite level sport, from 19 years old, you said, through to, retiring from that and taking on such a huge challenge, has there been kind of like a lot of transferable skills, or has it been like literally like starting from scratch?
Yeah, that's a good question. And the way I thought about it just the other day is, have you ever seen the movie Slumdog Millionaire? It's basically like his life was a culmination of experiences that made him who he was at the certain time to be able to get through certain challenges. And obviously in the movie it was get through questions on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, whatever it was. But for me, I think I've learned so many things throughout my life, not only with sport, but also just with my experience of traveling everywhere and moving around so much, that I think that stuff has definitely helped me with my transition into business. And like you alluded to, I mean, my partner on this he's very experienced, and he's been tremendously patient and helpful with me throughout the process. So I've been blessed my whole life, and things are continuing in the business world.
Yeah, like that absolutely resonates. I completely get where you're coming from. This idea that actually all of your experiences culminate into where you're at now, and kind of everything's transferable in its own way. Absolutely. Just thinking about like the other players you've seen who've retired and so on. Did you have some folks who were kind of guiding you to start thinking about your life beyond hockey, or was this something very much that you kind of always had your head screwed on, if you like, that this life doesn't last forever, I need to think about beyond the game?
Yeah, I think early in your career you think you're going to play for 20 years and make $100 million or whatever guys are making these days. But kind of as I went along, I started to realize that I had ambitions to be more than a hockey player. I mean, definitely now, like, I don't want to be looked at as just like a guy that played in the NHL. I want to make a difference on the globe, and with Outcast Foods, and then whatever comes next, I want to make a real impact towards the environment, and especially animals. I'm so passionate about that now. So I think, to answer your question, I started to think about it later in my career, and was able to network with the right people during my playing career, and again, just really lucky that things worked out with my co-founder now.
Is there kind of support for players to think about that, or is it kind of very much like on their own terms? They have to figure this stuff out themselves, or is there kind of a almost like, I'm thinking of like people transitioning out of the military, need some help just figuring out like, what do I do next? Because there's some kind of parallels with that insofar as it's such a unique position. As opposed to, most people would take on one job and then they take on another one, and there's kind of similar jobs for the rest of their kind of working lives. Whereas elite level sport, and I've spoken to a couple of folks in this world, it's kind of very much one world and then very much another. And many have talked about this idea that actually there wasn't necessarily a huge amount of support from the game itself to help folks think about beyond, because, like you say, not everybody is kind of going to be at the point where they probably never need to work again, or even they don't want to. I imagine most people want to do something else,
Yeah, definitely. I think the league and the Players Association are trying to help out a little more now. Like, when I first came into the league, I don't know if there were any resources for it really, and you've seen some players over the years struggle with that transition. It's not easy. So they're trying. I think they need to do a little more for sure. And it is a unique situation for everyone, because you're in a locker room with 25 guys, and maybe 8 of them will never have to work again in their lives, 8 to 10, and then some of them will still want to do something, right? Like, there's so many different avenues that you can go down, but everyone needs support and needs some help on the transition.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think you're providing a positive example for many. I'd imagine there's some of your ex-teammates who are thinking, what, that sounds like a great plan, even if it's not directly dehydrating foods, but perhaps I should go into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I try to tell guys too that you're smarter than you think you are, and you can learn quicker, because I didn't know what 95% of the terms that I talk about every day are now when I retired, and you can pick things up pretty quickly, and you find the right people to partner with, or the right mentors, and you can move forward pretty successfully. But I think it's easy to fall back into that lifestyle of hockey. You just become a coach or a scout or a manager somehow in the front office. It's a very simple thing to do and a safe thing, but to step into a completely different world like entrepreneurship or whatever it is in the corporate world, it's you got to stick your neck out a little.
Have you found you've had to sort of almost find this is you finding a new buzz, if you like, because I can imagine there's a lot of adrenaline that goes with that elite level sport that's you just can't replicate anywhere else. The crowds and so on and so forth. And like you say, I can imagine, and I'm not obviously speaking from any kind of level of experience, being at best a beer league sort of hockey player in the UK, but I can imagine folks who've gone into that coaching world, kind of that itch is never quite scratched again. Whereas, kind of being the co-founder of something as exciting as this, yes, it's not the same, but I imagine it's got its own buzz to it. You're learning things, like you say, that are just incredibly new and exciting. Have you kind of felt that? Have you felt that kind of replacement, if you like, of that buzz?
Yeah. Like, you're never going to play. I played a game in front of 77,000 people once, an outdoor game in the World Championship. So you're not going to have that again in the business world. Like, no one is watching you, sign a partnership with a farm. It's never going to happen, right? So I think you got to find a way to move on and stop living in the past. So for me, like, I try to live in the present as much as possible, and just enjoy the ride and enjoy learning. There's so much to learn, and I know for now on I'll be in business for the rest of my life, because it's just a completely different feel, and I guess a different rush, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, I can imagine. How's COVID affected the business? Because we're you founded it in what, 2017?
Yep, late 2017.
Was it around that time? Late 2017. So sort of 4 years in. So still relatively early on in the business's kind of history. How has this kind of massive pause on the world affected you?
Yeah, well, it's almost there's almost a dichotomy with it. So obviously we have a supplement brand that sells in retail, and our biggest retailer went bankrupt in COVID. So our business actually lost a ton of revenue from what we were projecting because of that. So that was a struggle. We were in the middle of financing. We were about to start our Series A right before COVID hit. So that took a long pause. We almost stopped for, I think, 8 months, where we were like, we're not gonna be able to raise money in this, even though we have a lot of momentum. So that was a struggle. But then at the same time, it really showed people how important sustainability is, and how your decisions, your food buying decisions, affect the globe in a environmental system, right? So you really have to pay attention to what you're buying, because it's going to affect you, whether it's pandemics in the future, whether it's forest fires, so on and so forth, right? That it's definitely made our business stronger, in the sense that people are looking at it more often now. So if I could go back, obviously, I think everyone would say we're going to not have COVID, but we're finding the positives in it as much as we can.
Yeah. Well, I'd imagine if you want a test of a business's durability, there's probably no better one. So coming through this like you have is probably testament to how sound the idea and the business itself is.
There were some dark days, though. It's tough as a startup going through this when the whole world goes on pause. But yeah, we made it through, and we're in a really good spot now.
Do you think that, talking about pandemics, and that obviously the reason for the pandemic, if you like, is I think almost been a little bit washed away. The connection with animal agriculture, if you like, has kind of not been brought to the forefront, I imagine, because that connection is not one that anybody would like to make at either a governmental level, who are obviously subsidising animal agriculture and so on, or from the big businesses who stand to make money from animal agriculture, etc. They don't want to make that kind of connection. And yes, this pandemic was attached to a kind of live animal market in China, but we think about swine flu, H1N1. There's so many links with whether it be pig farming, chicken farming, etc., etc. Do you think that message has been needs to be made louder within the vegan community, if you like, that these connections are made?
Yeah, I mean, I think any vegan is going to definitely say it does need to be louder and needs to be talked about more. But I find even with myself, right, like I'll use an example, the documentary Earthlings. It's obviously a really tough watch. And I think you get in this position where you're like, okay, I'm vegan, so I don't need to watch that because I'm not actively participating in that kind of suffering and cruelty. And I'm guilty of that too. I haven't watched Earthlings yet because I'm like, it's going to hurt me too much to watch, and I'm not someone that does that, so I don't need to see it, right? So it's almost the same thing with these live animal markets, right? You're like, I would never go to one. Obviously, I don't condone them, but I don't even want to talk about it because it's not something I take part in. So it's I think that's probably what you're seeing in a way, but I think the people that need to look at it are the non-vegans.
Yeah, absolutely. I sort of I worry that message is just not being heard at all, and if it's not, we, like you say, we're sort of, there's another pandemic round the corner if we continue to sort of treat animals in this mechanistic kind of mass kind of scale.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and I mean, I there's still optimism though, right? Like you look at what Impossible has done and Beyond Meat has done. Like it's crazy. 100%. Like if you thought the growth that those companies would have had, 5 years ago, you would have never guessed it. And then I'm optimistic about these cultured meat companies too, right? Like the people that will never give up animal meat and they'll never switch to an analog, they're going to have an option too, right? Like, and they'll make it cheaper eventually, and then we'll be off and running because I hate to say it, but I think some people will never give up meat until they die, right? So it's nice that there's going to be these options where there's no animals dying.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's in the last week that I think Oatly has been sort of publicly traded for the first time, and Beyond is up there too. How does, as an entrepreneur with a relatively new startup, how does those kind of things factor into your kind of excitement level, if you like, about where Outcast could
it's
go?
inspiring. I mean, Oatly, you just brought up, they had a $10 billion valuation. Like that's mind-blowing, the amount of money that is. So I think for us, we just want to keep making the right moves. You're right, we're early stage, that you just got to keep doing the right things and keep hitting milestones. And then I think the same thing probably happened with Oatly, right? They just kept doing the right things, and before they knew it, they had the option to go public and make a true impact. That's the big thing that we want to follow with those big brands, their footsteps.
Absolutely. I'm not sure if we've 100% covered exactly where Outcast Foods sort of end up. I'd love to sort of explore that a bit, because obviously you've got the supplement range. We talked a little bit about the supplement range, but there's way more to it than that. So it'd be good to sort of understand from your point of view, where does Outcast Foods kind of fit in?
Yeah, well, I think for us, our goals are to expand across Canada. We're, like I said earlier, we're building out our first truly large-scale facility outside of Toronto. I think after that, it's probably to spread west a little further from there, maybe get into British Columbia, which traditionally has a lot of food waste and a lot of farms, and then work our way south into the U.S. and start to impact there. And then from there, I always say you could spin a globe and drop your finger, and there's a business case for Outcast Foods to have a facility wherever you end up. There's that much food waste. So it's just to keep growing and keep making an impact on this food waste problem that's truly so big that you can't even comprehend it.
Yeah, absolutely. Where could folks go to find out a bit more?
Outcastfoods.com. That's the best place. We try to publish a lot of content to keep people up to date with what we're doing, and show them a bit of what we see every day. That these truckloads of fruits and vegetables that are going to waste, or full crops. So it's an interesting place to go if you care about that stuff, and if you care about sustainability. And always say you got to try our products because we have a 100% guarantee to, if you don't like them, you can get your money back. And of the thousands and thousands that we've sold, I think we've had, maybe a handful of people turn it back. So it's a pretty amazing flavor.
Yeah, it's pretty compelling. It really is, like, from, not only from the nutritional standpoint, but the ethical standpoint, the food waste sustainability. Like, it just ticks all of, for me personally, ticks all the boxes. I think it's a pretty incredible idea. And there's direct to customer on the website too,
Yep.
right? So you can buy
Exactly.
direct.
Yeah, I don't know if we sell in the UK yet, but eventually.
I looked.
Yeah, maybe some big retailer will call us after this, and we'll be able to get into the UK.
Let's hope so. I'd love to see Outcast Foods over here. I think it would be amazing. And like you say, I think there is, like, I'm thinking about the UK. The food waste problem is off the scale. Absolutely, this kind of solution could be, like you say, dropped into anywhere on the map. Certainly across Europe. Once you're done with Canada and the States, definitely hop over the pond.
I'd love to be out there. Love being in the UK.
Awesome. Well, look, TJ, it's been awesome chatting with you, and kudos to you for an incredible idea. The brave step of moving from one elite career to another. More power to you. I think it's an incredible story, and I'm sure you'll be up there with the Oatleys and Beyonds with that idea, if not much further. So a huge well done, and I look forward to seeing the progress.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate it. Thanks for spreading the word about veganism too.
Awesome.
That was awesome. I appreciate it.
I just moving around like 30 for 20. I had a radar hit, and I was doing it like that, and there was something